Hello, I'm Stefan Marinov, and I am part of the accessibility calendar application that was built. In this short video, I'm going to demonstrate some of the features and walk you through how the application is being used. This is the application, and if you scroll on the landing page, you will find more information about it, the three developers who were part of the process, and a little bit of a contact form so that you can get in touch. The way to access the application is when the user has an account, and there are two ways. One of them is they already have an account and they can sign in, or they can register as a new user. In this scenario, I'm going to register as a new user, and I'm also going to log in as an existing user and just show the various ways of using the application. So we're going to register, and we're going to use a fake email. And we are going to register. So then we're taken to the summary page where we do display a bar graph of all the various events and all the various timings. Now, this is a new user, so it is reasonable to understand that there are no events for that user. And now we're going to create a few of them. We click on the new event button and we give event some names. So test event 1. And also do the description. The description and the name could be different. I'm just going to use the test event for ease of use. And I'm going to do some do various dates so that we can see how the application behaves. When you log in as a new user, you are given 3 of those categories as a default, but you can always add a new one. And each category allows you to set different thresholds or different reminder points. We give the user up to 3 possible thresholds that they can have. So anything within the earliest threshold is okay. Anything in the middle is basically going to be an alert to the user. And finally, we're going to have the critical stage where the event really needs to take the user to take some action. So we're just going to select one of the predetermined categories, and one of the next events is going to be using a different category. So we save it, and the page refreshes, and there we have our first event. Now let's create another event. This event is going to have a lot longer time frame, and we are going to make it, let's say December. Let's say Christmas shopping in December, or any type of other shopping. So we see now that we have the two events right there. One of them is in green color, and that's because we haven't reached the threshold yet. And because this is a different event with a much shorter time frame, with a much shorter duration, like March 24th, that's why it is in with a critical stage. Now let's add a new category. So test event 3. And we're going to set a somewhat of a medium date, let's say May 1st. So in the new category, the user can select a name and on the description what that category is all about. And let me just fix the spelling errors. And those are the thresholds that we provide. So the user can select between days, weeks, and months. And over here, they can enter the number of those weeks or days or months. So let's say we're going to have an event that has a T1 threshold, and the T1 threshold is the one closest to the deadline. And we're going to give it 1 week in terms of a reminder. Then we're going to go 2 weeks, and we're going to go 1 month. So when we save it, it automatically adds that category to the database, and then it adds the event. And there we have the different, the three events right there. So let's add a new event. Test event 4. And let's give it also somewhat of a more immediate time frame. Let's say April 15th. And let's also add a new category. And this drop down, as you see, is updated once we add a new category. Let's do another new category. So test category 2. And in this case, we're going to give it, let's say, 1 month, 2 months, and 3 months. So those are the type of reminders. And once we save it, there we have the event. Now let's talk about a little bit about the graph. So the graph is actually normalized. So what that means is events, regardless of their duration, they are plotted on this 9-bar graph. And the closer it goes to the 0 point, that means the closer it comes to the deadline. So things like Christmas and the other events that were so far away, obviously they're going to be taking the full span. And then events that are taking place in a shorter time frame, they're also plotted and normalized based on those 9 graphs. So they all look, we don't have a humongous date gap and range. So one event being a tiny sliver here versus another event occupying the entire graph, especially when it comes to, let's say, events that take place a year or more apart. So that is the way we design the graph. So everything is normalized based on those 9 bars and then plotted on the bar. In addition, instead of seeing a whole listing of events and a whole summary, the links to each particular event is part of the graph. So if you click on event number 1, I am given a short description about it, or some of the information in a short form that we have entered previously. So we know that, holiday gifts, and we know the due date is March 24th, and we are in the critical because that's how the last threshold date was. And the deadline right here is our next phase change, which is basically the due date. From here, the user can do one or two things: edit the event or delete the event. So if you go to edit the event, that opens up the same model that we used for the event entry. And I'm just going to update the description to with updated description and save it. Then everything gets redrawn. Obviously, we didn't make any changes to dates, so everything looks the same. But once we click on the date, there we see the updated description. And now let's go ahead and delete the event. And that basically deletes it and redraws the graph. And you see that things may have slightly shifted a little bit, and that's because of that normalization. Now, the donut graph that we see right here, that is basically the time taken to complete the event from the actual date saving or the date creation to the due date. And obviously now it is showing the declining time. So the full donut is the timeline. And as the days progress, that timeline is going to get shorter and shorter and shorter up until it reaches the original 12 o'clock position, which denotes the event ended. Now let's take a look at the functionality when the user signs in. So we already had a user. So this is a completely different user, and I just need to grab the fake email and the fake password. And as you can see, the person has 5 events and all of them span at different ranges. So we can click on this, which was created by a touchscreen device, and we can see that little sliver right here that I was mentioning about the declining time. It calculates that based on the date, the Unix timestamp, so it's always going to have that little sliver as the seconds pass by. So, I mean, let's go and edit the event and maybe give it a different deadline. And instead of March 31st, let's all of a sudden bump it to March 22nd. And let's see what happens. Event gets withdrawn, and obviously because we haven't reached the thresholds as we set in the new categories, we are not getting any of those warning labels. But let's also make sure that we change the event category to, let's say, a prescription refill. And that gives us a completely different presets. So after saving it, now we see that the event has entered into a completely different category. Also, the user can enter a new event. So let's say event 5 with test event 5. Let's give it a June time frame. Let's say June 20th. And category, we can use a prescription refill as well. And we save it. So obviously that event hasn't reached the reminder threshold, so that's why it's still in green status. So that way, now the user can visually see the progress of each event and which event they really need to pay attention to. And that concludes the demonstration. For future builds, for future development, one of the things that the team is thinking about is actually adding more into the profiles and settings where actually the user can view each category, view the thresholds, and perhaps make changes to those. So that would be a future development.